I genuinely find it staggering how many stories I hear about people being arrested for saying something in public, either to a police officer or to a member of the public, for harassment, alarm, or distress. Because this is now so overly inflated in its meaning that it has no meaning anymore. Simply somebody saying something as simple as "you're a muppet" or "what a muppet." Now, I have to caveat straight away because there have been arrests for exactly this. So my caveat is this. I'm not talking about any specific case, and every case turns on its own facts, and those will be presented to a court if necessary, if they're charged with anything, and the relevant court, be that the magistrate's court or a crown court, if anything got that far, for them to decide. My comments here are generally how this law applies generally. So with that in mind, generally, in my view, the word Muppet, calling somebody a Muppet in most scenarios is absolutely not going to be causing anyone harassment, alarm or distress. You see, there is a case, I covered this on my main channel video, where I think I said we all need to calm down a bit, which is exactly sort of what I went with in that video. And it's absolutely true. And by everybody, I really mean the people claim to be getting upset by these phrases, and particularly the police, either when they claim to be upset by it or that they seem to believe that members of the public are upset by it, because they genuinely shouldn't be, not to an extent that should be upheld in law. Take a breath, Daniel. Right. We're here on Off the Record, if it wasn't obvious, and bless you those that have commented that this attaches to clothing. I know it does. It's sometimes better to hold it. The sound seems to be a little bit better when I hold it. If I'm walking out and about, I might do some out and about walking videos and attach this to my clothing there, but for the meantime, I'll just hold it. And by the way, thank you all so very much for the push for 100,000 subscribers. We will have another one of these things on the wall very shortly, although I understand they are now somewhat smaller from YouTube. But nonetheless, thanks to all of your help, we will have another one on the wall next to these. We now push at 105,000. How's that happen? I mean, and moreover, we're now pushing 105,000. So 5,000 over the first target. Here's a question for you. Which channel will reach 1 million subscribers first? My main channel or this one? Or even Black Belt Secrets? Because some people have said this one has more potential. Probably because I'm being completely open and frank with you about what I really think, which I try not to do on my main channel. But thank you all so much. So in this case, I'm going to show you, I've got a screenshot of it on my phone because I'm sat on the sofa. You know it's serious when I come to sit on the sofa. This is the case that I'm talking about here. And the bit that's highlighted in purple is the bit where the court looked at what it really means to be caused distress within the meaning of the Public Order Act for harassment, alarm or distress. Now, they are three phrases. They are taken as a collective, but they each have individual meanings. There is, and here's the dangerous bit, there is no specific definition of either of these in law, which means we revert to the ordinary dictionary meaning of the word. Now, of course, harassment also has a legal meaning to it. It can only be harassment if it is a course of conduct, which is at least 2 occasions the thing happened, and it must meet the relevant threshold, which is supposed to be a high bar on each of those occasions. So if one of them was really bad and the next one was just a, hey, how are you? That obviously doesn't add to the course of conduct for harassment. I hope that's obvious, but to some it might not be. So with respect, that should be obvious. But if they each don't amount to harassment, then it's not harassment. Now, alarm and distress. What did the court say? Because the only definition, the only real interpretation of the true meaning of the word that we have here is in this case from 2006. And it was an application. So it was reverted to the court as a question as to, were they right to find this thing? Now, in this particular case, as it happens, it was a police officer. The police officer was asked under cross-examination, were you really alarmed and distressed by this? Did this behavior really cause you to suffer emotional disturbance? And it said here, the officer did not suggest the behavior caused him to suffer emotional disturbance. And it'd be most surprising, the court said, if it had caused a mature police officer to suffer emotional disturbance. Although the case does not record the physical details of the parties involved, we're told that that it's not in dispute that the person accused of this was 4'9", and the police officer was over 6 foot, weighed over 17 stone, and was by all accounts an experienced police officer. So in no sensible, sane world would a mature police officer be caused serious emotional disturbance by being called names. That is just ludicrous. Even if those names were really awful, unless they came to a point where it was, let's say, it was seriously derogatory, personal attack on the person's sexual orientation or their race or their religion or something like that, and it was really, really heinous attack on that police officer, and it was sustained and really vulgar language, yes, then you might say they might genuinely then be caused emotional disturbance. But if someone was called an idiot or a muppet or a clueless idiot or whatever, I'm making things up here, but any of those things, absolutely, they should not be causing an officer or indeed a member of the public serious emotional disturbance. The court went on to look at this and said, well, what do these really mean? What does distress really mean? And particularly this was regard to section 4A. So there's intent involved, but there's no sort of fear of unlawful violence. And it is not just the lesser, some people might be upset by it, whether you intended or not, which is section 5. Section 4A, where the intent is involved, which is a little bit more serious than section 5. The court said the word distress here takes its colour from its context. It said it's a part of a trio of words, harassment, alarm, or distress, but they are expressed as alternatives. It said, in combination, they give a sense of the mischief that it was aimed to prevent. So harassment, alarm, distress, that should be a relatively serious thing that the court is trying to prevent. Well, the law, is trying to prevent. If someone is seriously being harassed, alarmed, distressed by someone's behaviour, they are being caused some serious upset. That, of course, is really what the law should step in to prevent and deter, with criminal sanctions if necessary, but not just by being called a name here or there. Let's read on, because the court said here, they are relatively strong words befitting an offence which may carry imprisonment or a substantial fine. The court said, I would hold that the word distress in this context requires emotional disturbance or upset. The statute does not attempt to define the degree required. So long as it is emotional disturbance or upset, then maybe that would suffice. But then obviously the penalty, the sentence, or indeed the fine may change depending on the level of severity found by the court. But the court went on to say it doesn't have to be grave, but nor should it be trivialized. So that is what I fear is happening out there at the moment, is these words, this meaning is being trivialized. As in, you could arguably, with what's going on today, what's being reported today, somebody could call someone an idiot out on the street and the police, right, you're nicked for public order for harassment, alarm or distress. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't cut it. Calling someone names, even repeatedly, if it's in, the expression, the right to the freedom of expression, you do have the right to offend somebody. That has been upheld in law. Free speech that doesn't encompass the right to offend somebody is not worth having. And whether it causes someone alarm, distress, that has to be taken to be real emotional disturbance, which is what the court went on to say. It said there has to be something which amounts to real emotional disturbance or upset. This is something, picture you've suffered a real grievance, some real serious upset to the family. Someone's been taken ill. Someone's been attacked, injured in a crash, bereaved, whatever. Something that has caused a real emotional disturbance. It is akin to that. And the court said, adopting that approach, I don't consider on the material set out in the case that the magistrates could, properly directing themselves, have found that this officer suffered distress in that sense. If anything, the evidence was to the contrary, that, he said he wasn't personally annoyed by it and so on. No one in their right mind is going to be genuinely, seriously annoyed, upset, distressed by being called names. If you are, walk away. It's not a matter for the police. It's not a matter for the courts. It's not a matter that somebody should be sent to prison for. If they go out of their way, now I've seen this, and this has been reported, and even still police have done nothing about it, but I've seen cases where someone has gone out of their way to send an email. That is a step further. That actually brings it under genuine malicious communications. If someone takes the active steps to find an email address and then commit to writing and send somebody something, a real heinous, horrible message, which is clearly on the face of it designed, written and sent with the sole intent and purpose of causing that person harassment, alarm, distress, that's different. That you might then take action on. But even then, it's a matter of degrees as to whether the police should get involved, or what the police might just do is ring them up, the alleged perpetrator, ring them up and say, look, you've sent this email. It's obviously not a civil thing to do. It's not a polite thing to do. It borderlines perhaps prosecution and criminal liability. Your card is marked. You need to watch it. That is really the true purpose that we should be looking at for things such as non-crime hate incidents. Because if it is a non-crime but it is a hate incident, that's really what it should be. Not just you're an idiot and therefore someone else is upset by it. Because the thing with non-crime hate incidents, I'm going off on tangents, but instead of complaining about it, either watch it or leave the video, but I go off on tangents is what I do. But a non-crime hate incident is not necessarily the alleged victim that's upset by something, but anybody else who believes that somebody might be upset by something can report it to the police. And without any substantial evidence, the police can record a non-crime hate incident against that person. I think that is wrong, because without proper investigation, without proper evidence, and without a proper decision, I would say by a tribunal, which is either a magistrate's court or a crown court, which obviously encompasses a jury, without an appropriate decision, they shouldn't be recording anything against you. Unless it does meet the standard, but they can deal with it by way of caution. So many cases, in fact, should be dealt with by way of caution, which is an official thing. It goes on your DBS check. You can either accept it voluntarily, or they can issue it to you, and it's a caution. They can tell you they are proposing to deal with this by way of a caution. You can appeal it. You can challenge it if you want to, because it's a public law decision by a public body. You could challenge that if you wish to, much like you could challenge a non-crime hate incident against you. But bringing this back, people saying they are upset by being called names, generally speaking, without referring to any case in particular, this is just nonsense. This is utterly ridiculous. So unless the greater circumstances of any of these cases is sufficient that they can convince a tribunal or properly directed panel at a magistrate's court, which is either lay magistrates or a district judge, or if in the case it goes to a crown court, obviously the jury, and convince a jury that this reaches the criminal threshold, then so be it. But otherwise it should just be on your way, let's move along. And in most cases, that is not going to be a public order offence. I thought this video was worth doing because a lot of you have asked the questions about it. I stress this cannot be taken to be a definitive conclusion on any one case, because there are several such cases live. This is general commentary, and any such tribunal, well, firstly, they shouldn't be watching this if they're on any tribunal for it. But secondly, if they happen to be, they have to listen to what's presented in court, because it might be different. So you see, even I have to make caveats. I mean, someone, I think this morning on my main channel, I happened to see a comment, and someone said, "Oh, you always sit on the fence and make caveats." Yeah, well, if I'm talking about a specific case, I have to either caveat that this is generalized and that I'm not making these conclusions on this case, or that I'm not talking about that case at all. I can tell people that case happened, and here's some general commentary. But that said, I thought this was worth doing. I'll link my other video on my main channel. And by the way, thank you all so much for subscribing. We blew through 100,000, now touching 105,000. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate the support. And as always, see you in the next one, and thank you for watching.